The worst impact of climate change could be irreversible by 2030, and it is estimated that more than 1 million species are at risk of extinction by climate changes. So these all issues with pollutions, different anthropogenic pressures, climate change are actually happening already, and it is detrimental to human life too. Our planet and our future. Today's panel within the European Day will answer all the questions you have on the EU Green Deal, fighting climate changes, the effects of pollution, and even beyond. Amazing panelists we have today include the Swedish Ambassador Johanna Strömquist, the EU Ambassador Mr. Sattler, Emini Šunje, a scientist and university lecturer. Her work includes the genetics and ecological studies of amphibians and reptiles. And during her amazing career, she led several highly important projects on regional scales and published highly cited papers. Ms. Mariana Kandic worked as a communication and culture officer as an IT company, South Balkans. She is extremely passionate about everything related to nature and particularly mountains. She found out an amazing application that you will hear about recently. Ayla Dorfer is a highly experienced in projects related to sustainable nature resource management, biodiversity, ecosystem services, and protected areas across the Western Balkans. And last but not least, as your moderator today, I'm Andreju Gajiću from the National Geographic, and I'm head scientist within the Southeast program in the Eastern Atlantic Ocean. So I would like to open this discussion with Ambassador Sattler. I have a question for you, and I would like to hear more about the influence of the ongoing pandemic on the EU's focus on the Green Deal.
Thank you, Andrew, and a warm welcome to everyone. Thanks, Ambassador Strömquist, for joining us on this important talk. And happy Europe Day and Europe Week. This is Europe Week, and we have a number of discussions. And the first one I'm very happy to have about the environment, our planet, our future. The good news is, Andre, that there is, well, first of all, we have the Green Deal, yes. Secondly, we have a recommitment. You heard a couple of weeks ago, the European Union decided to beef up and speed up its Green Deal initiatives, and especially reducing CO2 emissions, not just by 40% as it was originally planned, but 2030, but going up quite substantially to 55%. The great news, of course, is also that the US is recommitting as one of the superpowers and also great polluters. This is good news, and this gives also optimism. This, has to become, a growth strategy for the European Union. There is about 500 billion euros foreseen in the next financial framework for the next 6-7 years. There's a lot of money, and I'm happy to see that COVID has not slowed down us in any sense when it comes to these signature initiatives of the European Union. Rather the contrary, it's actually, it seems it has sped up what we want to do on this very important topic. I think the important thing is now a green recovery, that we take also the lessons from this pandemic, which has changed quite a bit of our daily lives, that we also take the positive lessons from that and keep those positive lessons. I mean, one of them for me personally, to be honest, is that there's a lot of useless flying around, useless travel, air travel, for meetings which can be really done online. For diplomacy, of course, offline meetings, in-person meetings are very, very important. This is our business models, but there are quite a number of useless business trips, let's be honest. And I think this is definitely one of the lessons from this pandemic. Coming to the Western Balkans, there is the economic investment package presented by the Commission last fall, 9 billion euros for the region, with a strong focus apart from connectivity and energy, also a strong focus on digital and the environment. The leaders of the region committed in November last year in Sofia, at the Sofia summit, for their own Green Deal, for the Western Balkans Green Deal, which is basically reconfigured or oriented along the main lines of the EU Green Deal. but as so often in life, and especially also in this region, the main thing is now is filling this with life, because you can put a lot of things on paper, and it's very important now to fill this with life, to come up with projects, to get from the commitments to implementation. And here we need to really speed up, because I checked the other day what's been going on so far since November, not too much, to be honest. Also, of course, because the main focus is now the economic recovery after the pandemic, but still, the next milestone is the summit in Berlin in July, the Berlin Process Summit, where this will be very much on top of the agenda, together with the common regional market. Also on that front, bringing the economies here together, creating the four freedoms, also big commitment from last year, but so far on the implementation side, relatively little. So we have to really speed up, and especially also speed up on the Green Deal here for the region. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sattler. It was such a pleasure to hear such great news at the beginning of this panel, and I hope that we will hear so much more great news from other panelists, because good news is perfectly what we need at this moment of the crisis with the nature and the climate changes and affected by pandemics. And I would like to continue with the question for Ambassador Strömquist. Please apologize if I pronounced your surname badly. Ambassador Strömquist, Sweden is highly engaged and has supported numerous projects in our country in fighting climate changes and both environmental protection. So what are some of your biggest successes and obstacles in the projects that you have funded so far?
Thank you for that question, and also thank you to the EU delegation for arranging this debate today on this enormously important topic. As we know, climate and environment, climate change and pollution of environment does not stop at borders. So this is why we have to work together globally on these issues, and that is why Sweden is working with partners all over the world, also within multilateral organizations such as the EU and the UN, to achieve the goals set by the Paris Agreement. And we're also happy to see this renewed engagement, and also the US again fully supporting this global work that we have to do together. Sweden is one of the world's biggest donor per capita to most existing multilateral climate funds. So we contribute in very concrete ways in many parts of the world. And this is also why we work here in Bosnia and Herzegovina to protect nature and to combat climate change with our partners. Talking about main successes, one of my favorite projects is ongoing in Bosnia and Herzegovina, is one that is implemented together with UNDP and local governments at different levels to reduce emissions from public buildings in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And through this project, we have reduced emissions by 60% from more than 200 public buildings by making them energy efficient. And now we're also expanding this project to include private household and industry. And I think this is a very important contribution. This is also actually a requirement to become a member of the European Union to make public buildings energy efficient. So it has many positive parts. Another success is that we are supporting a countrywide strategy and action plans for environment. It's a plan for the whole country, and it has more than 400 stakeholders currently from different parts of government, but also civil society and academia working together to put this plan in place and this strategy in place. Hopefully will be adopted sometime beginning next year. This will also be important to prioritize and decide which actions to take first and how to do it together, but also to get funding, both domestic funding and from the EU and other partners to achieve the goals when it comes to climate and environment. Finally, I also want to mention we have many projects and many successes I want to say, but finally, I also want to mention the project called Think Nature that is implemented through the local organization CPCD. They are doing a tremendous work to raise awareness and involve young people in taking concrete actions, also reporting on the situation when it comes to climate change and environment, and to demand change, advocacy. So these are some of the projects we're doing, and it's really in line with what we believe, that you have to involve the whole society when it comes to climate change and environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Strömquist, for your answers and for all the support that you are doing for our country with such important projects. But we do believe that science must meet policy to fight climate changes and to mitigate the negative effects of the pollution that we have on our ecosystems today. And various ecosystems are affected not only by the climate changes, but also by the pollution and by increased sanitary medical waste due to ongoing pandemics. So my next question is addressed to my colleague Emini. Are there any examples that sanitary or medical waste or the agents from sanitary medical waste might be associated with the mutagens in lower vertebrates? And could you tell me how the tangible populations of amphibians and reptiles responded to the dramatic increase of this waste due to the ongoing pandemic?
So first of all, good morning to actually already afternoon almost to everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be a participant at this panel. I'm really pleased. Not to take more of your time, I see that Andreju, you asked me actually two questions in one, if I understood well, right?
Yes, if you can combine them, that would be amazing.
Yes, of course, yes, because anyway, I would do so even if you didn't ask this, because they're very connected actually. So the pandemic, as we are already, let's say, 1.5 years, 2 years, we are entering the second year of the pandemic, and this created really an enormous amount of waste worldwide. We don't think about it, but like all the plastic pollutant that come from the personal protective equipment, so masks, gloves, bottles of hand sanitizers, they represent a new wave of litter polluting not only soil but also waters worldwide. So this kind of pollutant can be considered as a physical form of pollutant. So, and like every physical form of pollutant, it interacts with the environment in various ways. So concretely, there are no studies on amphibian and reptiles, but there are studies on how this kind of waste impacts the animal welfare in general. Concretely, there is a study that was released 2 months ago. And in this study of Dutch scientist, Heemstra et al., basically they also designed a whole website where you can report how the litter impacts animal welfare. They have been observing, like in every plastic litter, as we know, Andreju, you know also very well how this the plastics inside the sea affects sea organisms. Like, you know, they can ingest the plastic waste. This creates problem with the digestive tract. They can get very easily trapped in this plastic waste. They sometimes starve to death. So the major problem with this plastic waste from the PPE, personal protective equipment, is basically observed in this kind of form. So species get entangled, they cannot get out of this plastic, and this creates really a big problem. This can be, let's say, categorized as a direct impact of this physical waste. Then we have the chemical waste of our pandemic. This chemical waste also can be categorized in various chemicals that after the pandemic caused the big problems, not only mutagens like directly impacting the DNA of organisms, but also creating a lot of physiological problems and disturbances. We have antibiotics that are used in much bigger, in a higher amount than usually. These antibiotics concretely are hydroxychloroquine and chlorine, which are some of the antibiotics used against the COVID. And a lot of people that actually had COVID had to be treated with those antibiotics, and these are expelled through fecal to feces and urine inside the water, and they create a lot of mutagenic effects, not only on aquatic organisms, but also plants and unicellular organisms, and also they create a big problem because a lot of bacteria can actually develop resistance to antibiotics. So antibiotics are one form of mutagens that arose after the pandemic. The second form of chemicals that induces problems in the environment is actually a dramatic increase of detergents and soap usage. So imagine now worldwide that everybody starts cleaning their hands like 10 times more than usually. You have a lot of waste that gets directly expelled in the water. And this is really a tremendous increase of chemicals that finish in our water. And for sure, they have a serious impact on our mainly aquatic organisms, but of course the aquatic ecosystem is connected with the terrestrial ones, so they get transferred mostly through the food chain in higher vertebrates and so on. The third class, let's say, of chemicals that is after the pandemic that caused a big problem for our environment are actually the large usage of disinfectants, so chlorine, triclosan, that are in sanitizer. This chlorine, basically, if you have, let's say, a big if you have a big system that has to sanitize, that has to disinfect a big area, you spray it everywhere, and this chlorine then evaporates in water, gets attached to the plants. Then with the rain gets raised from the plants to the water system, and then it ends up again in the water, creating big problems. So chlorine and triclosan are one of those big chemicals that after the pandemic are really causing big problems to our nature. Also, I would say that the problem is that they are not just directly mutating the DNA, but creating those physiological disturbances. They are bioaccumulative, persistent, and really dangerous. So we still have to discover actually quantify, let's say, the true impact of those substances on nature, because it's a relatively small period that passed, and for a serious study and to assess a really serious impact of those substances, you need time, because it will develop maybe just in 5 years, 3 years from now, after those chemicals enter nature. So we still have to see actually the true impact of these COVID substances on nature, but it is really clear that the physical waste, as I said, I started this with the physical waste. So the physical waste is already obviously creating...
je već tu vidljiv, stvara puno problema.
Wait to see the true impact, but all those substances that I listed are really dangerous and bioaccumulative. So we still have to wait. I hope that this answers your questions.
Thank you, Emina, for such a detailed and professional explanation. My work is also directly related to effects of microplastics and medical and war waste on disease development in aquatic animals. So it's always such terrifying to know all the plausible effects of pollution on the affected ecosystems and the population that live behind. And the impacts of pollution and climate changes are actually observed everywhere, both in the wild and urban areas. So next question is for Ayla. Could you please explain us the concept of green roofs in urban ecosystems and how they affect human welfare? And could you tell me some of their special values during the lockdown periods? Could you please unmute yourself, Ayla?
Sorry. Thank you very much, Andrew, for the question, and hello to everyone from my side. The concept of green roofs is not new, and it is a pity that is not already widely present in Sarajevo, as a city that has one of the lowest percentage of urban greenery in the region and has a constantly growing rate of urbanization. There are many benefits of green roofs in terms of environment and nature. I'm pretty sure that you are aware of it. But in this pandemic situation, green roofs has or get a complete different dimension, and it is more related to the social one. The idea is that in lockdown episodes or shelter in place that are common policies that government used to pronounce in this global pandemic situation. Cantons and especially vulnerable groups, as for example, elderly people or mothers with small children, have a place where they can go out to enjoy fresh air, or they can get a sun bath or engage on urban gardening, watching birds, and so on. By forming such a green roof or green roof garden, we give a new dimension to pretty dead and unused space here in Sarajevo. We're breathing life, intending to turn these spaces in a new place for socializing, recreation, education, art. You can say the list is infinite. And we are like wishing that these people are closer to nature. And my organization that I'm working in and leading of Forest Environmental Action, FEA, is currently implementing the project Green Roofs of Sarajevo, sustainable space during a crisis period, together with the Czech organization Empress and Accelerator Lab of UNDP in Bosnia, founded by the UNDP Challenge Fund, and we are very pleased with this project. And I think as an NGO sector, we really need some innovative initiatives to adapt the new pandemic situation and the crisis. So that's all from my side. I hope that you're satisfied with the answer.
Thank you, Ayla, for amazing explanation. It is more than certain that scientists, policymakers, and all the enthusiastic persons have to join their forces to fight climate changes, pollution, and for the advancement of the environment. Mariana, could you shortly explain us what is Be Eco, and in your opinion, what can individuals do to contribute to more sustainable living and for conservation?
Hello, everyone, from my side as well. I'm really happy to be here today, not only as a panelist, but also to learn from, all the stakeholders involved. Be Eco is a love project. It started actually due to the love for nature and the fact that being a very passionate mountain climber, I have noticed a lot of trash, particularly plastic waste in the mountains. And somehow I decided to share my love for the mountains and also kind of to point out that there is such waste in the mountains. And this is why I established a platform. It's currently only on a Facebook and Instagram platform. And although I would say the environment is not as popular as some other areas in Bosnia, I would say that the platforms have gained a lot of popularity, and I hope they will gain even more. In Be Eco, I share actually some very easy tips and tricks, as well as my experiences on how to live more sustainably. It starts with basically what each individual can do without expecting the government or without expecting somebody else to do something. So I believe that if you want to change something, you need to start with yourself. So it provides tips and tricks on how, for example, you can go shopping without using the plastic bags and fighting, in grey markets with like people, small-scale farmers selling stuff, wanting you to take a plastic bag, and then you try and also educate them as well that you don't actually need it. It also kind of shows that you can, bring your own glass containers to big supermarkets and ask people to whatever you're going to weight, you can just weight it in your own packaging. So you don't need to take these plastic bags or any kind of container. It also provides on how should we plan our shopping in order to reduce food waste, which is actually one of the biggest ways the waste is generated. So it's actually the platform which provides very easy day-to-day tips and tricks on how individuals can do stuff instead of, we have policymakers and we have government, but I believe that it should start with individuals, because if we start saying no, to plastic bags, then the companies will start producing them. Will stop producing them as well. So it's kind of sending a message also to the producers as well.
Thank you very much, Mariana, for such beautiful explanations. And Ambassador Sattler, we heard some of the amazing scientists and environmentalists and their opinions on the plausible effects of the climate changes and pollution on our planet. So could you please tell us what are some of the biggest obstacles regarding the green agenda for the Western Balkans, including our country?
Look, one of the answers was given by Mariana before. The change starts with yourself. And this is probably the most difficult part. Yes, there is a lot of things which can be done on the regulatory level, very important, by the way, national strategies, capacity building, but one of the main factors contribute to real change is that you start changing yourself. and your patterns. And this is the most difficult, as we know, from our personal experience. And for me, to be honest, quite disappointing here, you know, what's happening and what's not happening in the region, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I've been posted here 24 years ago, and there is huge progress on many fronts since then. But on the environment, to be honest, there is way too little which has happened over this 20 years, it's very hard to do this without also a concerted effort in education system involve that. It's great, you know, with this what Mariana and others are doing is really showing the way. This is great, but you have to start earlier. You have to start educating the youngsters in school, but also, of course, at home. So this is very much living by example, and stopping doing crazy stuff. Like it took me, I don't know, a couple of months to have my drivers have the motor stop when they wait for me sometime. I mean, you know, that you get all kinds of excuses why this is necessary. You know, it's nonsense. You know, just stop the motor. Stop the tap, you know, don't let water run for hours. You know, this is plastic bags, as was mentioned before. I mean, there are so many things where we can make a change at home, we can make a change in the family, but it needs to be integrated into education plans. And here, to be honest, I'm a bit at a loss. I mean, how to proceed here. Since not much has happened over the last 20 years, unfortunately. Looking at the rivers, I mean, is another very sad story, especially here in BIH. This needs a sea change when it comes to personal behaviors.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sattler. Yeah, well, the proper education and rising awareness are definitely one of the most important steps towards the sustainable living and towards the sustainable long-term in-situ conservation. And in order to achieve this ultimate goal, we all have to work together and join our forces. So my next question is for Ambassador Strömquist. I'm interested in what are the best ways for us to work together? How can your institutions and local institutions best support the work of the scientists in the country and in the region?
I think it's important to remember when we discuss climate change and the ongoing climate crisis that these problems are man-made. We have created this situation, and that means that we can also reverse the trend. And I think that's the light at the end of the tunnel when you look at the very depressing developments all over the world right now. So it means we need to think out of the box. We need to think creatively, innovatively, and work together. I think like I mentioned before, I mean, to have change, you need to have the whole society involved. In Sweden, there's been a very strong civil society movement for decades that has pushed both to raise awareness, but also to push politicians to create this kind of change that they want to see. And also organizing this kind of, I mean, education doesn't only have to be in school. It can also be, I mean, we used to go to this forest school when I was a child in the 70s in Sweden, where you learn about it. And it's very effective to teach children about these things, because we all know then they will teach their parents and tell them not to throw things in nature and so on. So I think you have to involve the whole society, because we need to transform our lifestyles entirely, and in parallel also create new sustainable alternatives. And this will happen through engagement of the whole society, both the private sector, academia, political sphere, but also citizens in general. So I think we have to work together and learn from each other, share the knowledge that's already out there. I mean, already today, it's not really even economically profitable with coal power plants, for example. If you look at non-fossil ways to create energy. So this is where we have to go. We have to work together all over society and involve all parts of society. And I think we can do it also between countries and of course within the multilateral system, because that's where we can most easily share this kind of information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Let's hear something directly from the field. Emina, can you please tell us more about the genetic differentiations and the population dynamics of the salamanders in Balkans? Are they affected by climate changes, and how?
So thank you, Andreju, for the question. This is my field, definitely. So the alpine salamander is actually a species that I've been working with for the past 10 years, and it's also the broad topic of my PhD dissertation. So why the alpine salamander, first of all? So the alpine salamander can be considered an umbrella species for the entire Dinaric arc. So it inhabits the alpine and the Dinarids, by the way, and in the Dinarids, it's inhabiting like the whole Dinaric arc from Slovenia till Albania. There are many populations that are spread in fragments. So basically, if we protect this salamander, we protect also higher biological organization, like higher vertebrates and so on. By protecting the salamander, I mean protecting its own habitats. That's the only way how you can actually protect the species. And that's how we can also protect a number of other accompanying biodiversity species. So this is especially relevant if you take in consideration that biodiversity is one of the 5 main pillars of the EU Green Deal agenda. So it is very important to think of our biodiversity, because that's a kind of ecosystem service that we as human beings have. So populations of alpine salamanders are actually relics of a wider distributed Pleistocene population. It means that during the Ice Age, when all the Europe was under ice, here in the Balkans, we had a pretty mild environment, which allowed many species to survive this harsh period. And one of these species is the alpine salamander. So it is a very, very old species. And for what came out of my PhD actually is that mountain Prenj, located in the central Bosnia and Herzegovina, a bit southern actually, from Konjic till Mostar. Actually, mountain Prenj is the main diversification center of the whole population in all the Dinarids. So all the salamanders that live in Slovenia, from Slovenia till Albania, actually came from the mother population of Prenj. And it is really a big shame to say that mountain Prenj is the only mountain along the Dinaric arc that has no status of protection. It is really our jewelry. It's one of Bosnia's and Herzegovina's most important hotspot, not only of biodiversity, but it's also recognized by UNESCO as a cultural heritage. And we as a state didn't still, I guess, recognize that. And it's really a shame. But if we have to protect these populations, we should protect mountain Prenj, because that's the mother population of all the salamanders. And it turned out to be the most genetically healthy population of all the populations that I study. And I studied many of them from Croatia, from Slovenia, from Albania. So that's what I want to say. If there is, of course, the salamander is affected by climate change because it's cold adapted species and it survives near mountaintops in the Dinarids. In the Alps, it has a more continuous distribution, but that's another evolutionary lineage. That's not the same, let's say, it's not the same biodiversity we're speaking. It's the same species, but it's not the same evolutionary lineage. And like those Dinaric populations are much more vulnerable than the alpine ones, and they're really disappearing. Like recently, they discovered a new population on Mountain Orion. That was like 2 years ago, nobody knew that they existed there, and they're still thriving on Mountain Orion, but it's really a small population that is disappearing because they need cold climate to survive, and there is not much of it left. throughout the Dinaric Alps. So we should really start thinking about not only the salamander, but all the biodiversity that is connected to those cold climates. We should really start acting fast because those ecosystems are really disappearing. I can say because I am in the field, I said 10 years already. So I see the change already in those 10 years. And I really advocate and appeal for awakening, at least when it comes to mountain pren, because it's really an amazing jewel that we have in this country. So I really hope that somebody will hear this scream and help us protect this area, not only because of the salamander, but because of all of us actually. So from the salamander, I went maybe too far, but I hope that this kind of opened a bit understanding of how the whole biodiversity works. So thank you.
Andreju, if you allow me to get in here quickly, because I find that fascinating what Emini just said on the salamander story and mountain pren. And I know it's a very difficult thing to get anything in terms of protection of the environment. But what can we do? How can we help you in this, in getting protection? And especially now, I spent quite a bit of time out there in the mountains myself. So I know how important it is. Any hints from your side on how to help you in that quest would be helpful. Also, maybe then in the aftermath of this discussion, that we get together with our people and try to help there.
I can talk about it very much. We have to organize a new webinar for that. But I don't know if we should continue now the discussion or maybe after. We should now start. Yeah.
If it's fine with the moderator.
Yes, of course. I'm more than happy to have the conversation started now.
Thank you. Thank you first, Ambassador, for your jump. Yeah. So what can be done? Personally, I was really a lot in the field. So I spoke a lot with the locals, and everybody loves that mountain. Really, like Mountain Čvrsnica is also one of the habitats of the salamander, but it's kind of protected already within the national park of Blidinje. But we cannot say that pren is more important, but it has, it's bigger, and it has, it was less glaciated than Čvrsnica. It harbors more biodiversity, and people really know it. Like if you ask the locals, they would be ready to fight if there must be a fight to protect it. There are a lot of illegal activities that are now ongoing on pren, like deforestation. It's really a huge problem. I don't know really how we can stop that, but like the plateau of this mountain is on 1,600, 700 meters of altitude. And now this deforestation is already came until 1,400. So they're really destroying the mountain. I don't know what must be changed. The problem is that the fees that they have to pay to make deforestation are lower than what they earn by selling this wood, So let's say deforestation is only one issue. And of course, it's connected again with climate change, with the changing the humidity levels, which, it's a chain reaction. But I don't know, the only way is to maybe just, say, let's protect it, to force the country to protect it, to say, okay, no deforestation, no more illegal hunting. They almost killed all the rupicapra, which is the wild goat. Before the war, you had enormous populations of wild goat and pren. Now there is only one single location where I saw them after many, many years. And if you speak with all the locals, they said, it was, full of them. So how to, we should start thinking about reintroducing wildlife there, the ones that is destroyed, stopping deforestation activities, illegal hunting. And those things can be only, I think, regulated if it is established, like if you establish a national park where you have rangers that take care of these issues. So maybe the first step.
Is it realistic to get another national park there?
Yeah, nowadays how the national parks are, I understand what you mean by that, and I agree fully. It's a bit, okay, you pinpoint a location and say, this should be a national park. Okay, let's make it a national park. It's sad that things are going like that. It should be, if any if any area should be a national park, I guarantee you that it should be Prenj, really, not only because of biodiversity, but because really the geomorphology there, it's just a planet chakra. It's really an energetic point. I hope that you went. If you didn't visit Prenj, please, I can bring you. I would be very happy to do so. It's a special hotspot. It's a special energetic point. So if any area should be a national park, it should be Prenj. I don't like the way national parks are handled in Bosnia. I agree. And I don't know, but you know, putting a weight on this area and proclaiming it, legalizing it as something that should be protected makes a difference. It's a starting point. And I know that the locals would really be happy to be part of this like fight for Prenj. So I don't know what would be the first step. And if it is, I wouldn't like it to be just national park to be a national park. It should be really monitored. It should be really, you know, there are ways of doing this. It's another topic, but it's a system, structured system. Once you have a national park, you have sectors that take care of every aspect of this area. So there are ways. I don't know, maybe that's the first one, but yeah. And promoting tourism, ecotourism, you know, that is so important. There are so many resources under Prenj. You have the river Neretva, you have the rafting, you have the people producing local products, not only food, but also clothes. And a lot of them could live out of this business. It just needs to be promoted as a concept, as an idea. We have to raise the consciousness of those people, and it requires time, but we must start for somewhere. So I don't know if it would be the best to say, okay, it's national park now, let's organize the people, let's organize, you know, rangers. I would do it like that, I guess. But always speaking with the local community first and see how to arrange this. Nobody likes this deforestation on Prenj. I saw people crying because of, they cannot stop, you know. You can see those trees, 700 years old, they just cut them in 2 hours, you know, it's so sad. So I don't know, maybe it was a bit disorganized, my way of putting things, but I hope I gave some important inputs to maybe plan some concrete steps. And I would be more than happy to get involved in these concrete actions, if possible.
Yes, thank you, Emina, for the information, and also thank you, Ambassador Sattler, for your interest and comments. And of course, congratulations, Emina, on your amazing studies. Keep up. It's very important for all the Bosnia and Herzegovina and for the region. And we heard a lot of information directly from the field. We heard valuable opinions from our ambassadors, and we also learned different practicals to achieve sustainable management. So my next question is for Ayla. What is the next step towards the sustainable management and responsible management of natural resources in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Thank you, Andre. It is really complex and question, and also the task. And there's a lot of dimension of that sustainable resource usage. But I certainly think that we should focus, and it is the burning issue in our country, is climate change. Unfortunately, basic things are not represented in our country as a climate change monitoring, for example, in protected areas. And we all know that how much they are important to us. We cannot talk about sustainable management of natural resources, especially forest and land, if we do not have measures for adaptation and mitigation of these. This is especially important in the context of pandemic also, because there are also certain links to how climate changes significantly affect the spread of the virus. In the coming decades, ecological degradation, rising temperature that are very present in the country. We have a big problems with wildfires in forest areas. I mean, I will probably share the opinion, but we have a huge damage for forest fires than for the anthropogenic or man pressures on forest ecosystems. We have extreme weather events here, and all these could intensify the threats to human health posed by viruses. Undoubtedly, the health of ecosystems is crucial for human health and for the range of ecosystem services on which we and all other living organisms depend on. So, in my opinion, this is like the burning issue for the next 5 or 10 years. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ayla, very much for your question and explanation. It was the next step, the future. So let's take a look at the past. Let's take a look at the past from an angle of the person who is not a scientist and not a conservationist and not related to any kind of the conservation activities. So, Mariana, I'm interested, when you look back in 5 years ago, what do you see in the nature? Advancement or regression?
Thank you for the question. But before I answer it, I would just like to join Emina's cry for praying, because everything she said, and she's more knowledgeable about it than I am from a scientific perspective as well, but also being just a mountain lover and especially a praying lover, I really believe this cry for help needs to be really, really loud. And things have changed over the past years, as now related to your question. I actually see both. I see degradation, but I also see some improvements. In terms of improvements, I'd like to start on a positive note. I see that people have become at least partially more aware of what's going on. And I would say that at least people around me have become more mindful about the surrounding and have become more mindful about their habits as well, which in my opinion is the core to sustainability. You know, the way we approach our everyday things, the way we treat nature, the way we treat each other, it contributes, you know, to living in a more sustainable world. On the other hand, I see a lot of degradation as well. In the course of the pandemic, as Emina explained, a lot of us have been throwing away, you know, a lot of plastics, plastic masks, plastic bags, you know, it's all single use. And we have become too consumeristic since 2015. We have become so obsessed with everything so fast, and we are not interested in repairing stuff. We are only interested in buying new and new and new and new, which accumulates a lot of waste. So I would say maybe both. On the other hand, again, pandemic has brought more people into the nature. And then I have seen them appreciating it more, but I have also noticed huge amounts of waste. Maybe because, as the Ambassador Sattler said, they're not educated, or maybe they're just simply not aware or not used to taking care of it. You know, in Bosnia, and I would say in the whole of the Balkans, if it's everyone's, it's nobody's. And I really dislike this approach. You know, what's everybody's, like parks, forests, mountains, we should all take care of it. You know, it's everyone's. And this is actually the reason why the platform started, just basically to showcase what's going on, and this is what you can do. So I would say both degradation and some improvements as well.
Thank you very much, Mariana. It's very appreciated. As the IPA program said, let's go up together. And I will add, let's learn from the experience. So Ambassador Strömquist, what can Bosnia and Herzegovina and the rest of the countries in the region learn from the Swedish results in combating climate changes and pollution? Because we all know that Sweden have done some amazing work regarding the combating climate changes. So are there any advices, particularly to our country, that can be used from your experience and also fight the climate changes, as we hear that they affected numerous populations and ecosystems, especially the highly important ecosystems that we have in our country?
Yes, like I said before, I think we can always learn from each other and work together. Not only can, we have to, because that's the only way forward. One thing that is very clear is that there's been a strong civil society movement in Sweden for decades, working to put environment and climate high on the agenda, and also to raise awareness amongst the public. And from this party, from this movement, there was actually a Green Party created. And then this Green Party is now in government, in a coalition in Sweden. So I think that's one part, to engage as broadly as possible civil society, to make sure that you have really the whole population engaged to make sure that these issues are at the top of the political agenda. I mean, this has now led to that Sweden has set a very ambitious goal to be one of the world's first fossil-free countries and be climate neutral by 2045, and have said that in 2040 all energy used in Sweden should be renewable. And to achieve this, we of course have to work proactively to reduce emissions, but we also really need this cooperation that I mentioned before between the state, the private sector, and civil society. And this is happening in Sweden. The private sector in Sweden is playing a crucial role in reaching these goals. Right now, for example, there's the steel industry in Sweden is looking into how to develop a method for fossil-free steel production. And the aim is to have already in 2025 the first car made out of fossil-free steel. So I think this shows that you have to work broadly, and the private sector is involved, like I said before, because climate-smart change will lead to economic and social development as well. I mean, green production is already a competitive advantage. So this is something where companies already know that this is the future, and there will soon be a race to get there. While Sweden has decreased emissions with 26% since the 1990s, the economic growth has been 71%. So, you know, this goes hand in hand. You don't, sometimes people say that this will have to change the way we live, and it will change the economic development in a negative way, but that is not true, and absolutely not any longer. So the lessons learned from Sweden is to involve the whole society. If you want change, like it was mentioned by several others before, engage yourself, try to make other people around you to engage and demand the change, and find ways to put these issues high up on the political agenda, and also make sure that the state is spending money on research when it comes to climate, because we need to be innovative, and we need to involve the private sector. I will just, I mean, there's been mentioning about the plastic in nature, and I think it's important to raise awareness. I mean, when I grew up also, there was this campaign in Sweden that was called Keep Sweden Clean. And it was also very effective. It was basically telling people what all this plastic and other things they were throwing in nature, what it does to animals and to nature, and how it harms the world that we're living in, and people stopped. And now people have this new innovation called plugging, that when you're out jogging, you can also pick up garbage or trash that people have left behind. So not only do not throw things yourself in nature, but you could actually pick up things that other people have left behind, even though it's annoying. So there are many things that can be done. And I think my main point and the lesson learned from Sweden is to involve everybody. From the smallest children to the highest level of decision makers, and also the private and public sector, and most importantly, perhaps civil society, to make sure to create this change.
Thank you, Ambassador Strömquist, and thank you everyone for joining such an important panel. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your thoughts on how to combat climate changes and how to mitigate the effects of pollution. This should be just the very beginning, and we all need to continue the discussion, dissemination of scientific results, and brainstorm the plausible resolutions to solve these important issues. Please note that after we finish the panel, I will ask you for a group photo. But in order to close the panel, I will address the Ambassador Sattler. What can officials, experts, but also citizens do to support all your efforts?
Thanks, Andre, and I want to thank all the panelists for being here with us today. I think Johanna put it very well. This is a whole of society thing. You know, piecemeal approaches do not bring us very far. So unless really this is picked up and being picked up also by large strata of society, I fear it's going to be very slow and piecemeal. So, but this is the time now really to push things, because devastation, degradation has gone to such a point, especially in this region, in this country, that there needs to be urgent action. Air pollution is one thing. We have been working also there with member states, with Sweden and others. Huge issue in this country. There is still not too much awareness. I mean, BIH is among the 3 countries worldwide which have the highest number of casualties every year. Every day, 10 people die because of prematurely because of air pollution. So these are things which really need to be put on the agenda of the political agenda. I will be here from the EU delegation, be continuing to push very strongly that this becomes much higher on the agenda than it currently is. And I can only invite all of you. I mean, this is preaching to the converted here, but I mean, the challenge is, of course, to get other strata of society involved here. Education is one thing, but then, to be honest, the other thing is also to get the buy-in from the state, from political actors, and this is an even greater challenge. I think it can only work with a lot of pressure. Without pressure, it's not possible. So regulations, but one other thing I believe, which is also we have to keep in mind in this region especially, is you can have the best regulations unless you have implementation and also fines involved. People need to feel that there is consequences for littering, for pollution, for throwing things out of the car, for throwing things into rivers. I mean, there needs to be a fine system in place in order to help also produce that change we all want to see in this country. On the positive thing, we have now, at least on this regional basis, this Green Deal for the Western Balkans. This is a good thing. Was happy to hear today also from Johanna that there is this national plan for BIH being developed, a comprehensive national plan. And then we need to see that we get the buy-in from larger strata of society and politics. And I think this is a good step. And I hope we are making progress in this very important field. Last point from my side, I would challenge here Emini and also Mariana and others to really push that project of PREN forward. I'm happy to get behind as well. There will be, I'll be organizing a big conference at the end of June on tourism, including also ecotourism. So this could be also an opportunity to present the project. We still have a bit of time. I understand there are already some institutions, some NGOs and others involved in getting protection for brand, but this can be also used. I can offer this from my side to give you also a platform for that.
Thank you. Sorry that I interrupt. I just jumped. I know a lot of people, locals, that already made a lot of work, like the Heinrich Böll organization gave really a lot of funds for like bringing awareness among not just locals in PREN, but in the whole country of that we can maybe arrange that I connect those people with the, I mean, how can it work? Can you send us a bit more information about this ecotourism seminar, I guess?
Sure. Zora will be in touch with you after this and with Mariana and give you the information to follow up.
I thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sattler. Really, thank you a lot for your consideration in this regard. It really means a lot.
Thank you, Ambassador. And I'm more than sure that we all stay in touch in order to work together and to solve these important issues. And thank you, all other panelists, for joining today and for all your ideas and thoughts and all the experience that you have shared. I would like to say just Happy Europe Day once again. And may I ask you to turn on your videos and to say our planet, our future, so we can record for the social media. And I will count for 3, and then we all say it. Just 1.
While people are switching on the cameras, I also want to thank all of you. This was really interesting and useful, and we will also, of course, be happy to stay in contact and work with all of you. So thank you for this interesting morning.
Thank you. Also, I agree with everything. Really, it's really useful.
Thank you. And could I just ask you to say just our planet, our future for the end of this beautiful panel? So we do it in 3, 2, 1. Our planet, our future. Thank you very much. It was such a pleasure to have you today. And I really do hope that we will see each other very soon.
Thank you.
Goodbye to everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.